A train runs to this mountain. It's sold as a weekend getaway, a route for everyone. And yet, over the course of its history, it has taken more lives than any other peak on Earth, more than Everest. And this, despite the fact that for any single person, the risk of dying here is among the lowest of all the high mountains in the world. So, why does this mountain, so accessible and so forgiving to everyone who sets foot on it, claim more lives than any other in total? This is the story of a place that looks exactly as safe as it is, in reality, dangerous. And it begins on an ordinary summer weekend. In the middle of June, in the year 2026, clear weather settles over the Mont Blanc Massif. And in a single weekend, the mountain takes 3 lives. On the Kufner Ridge, a roped pair falls, a brother and sister from Savoy, caught in a rockfall. That same day, on the opposite Italian side, a skier dies on the Brenva Spur. By the evening of the 13th of June, the rescuers of Chamonix have carried out 11 rescue operations in a single day on a single massif. And that's only part of the picture. Over those 3 days, 9 people die across the entire northwestern Alps. The newspapers call it the deadliest weekend of the year in the mountains. But all the attention is drawn to one summit, the highest in Western Europe, to the white dome you can see from dozens of kilometers away. And here is where the strangeness begins. This is not the Himalayas. You don't need to fly halfway around the world, arrange an expensive permit, and spend weeks trekking to the foot of the mountain across a glacier. A cable car runs to Mont Blanc. A mountain tram runs to it. Tour companies sell the climb as a weekend program, as a route for everyone, for anyone in decent shape who isn't afraid of heights. The mountain gets photographed for postcards. Ordinary people on holiday set out on it, not just professional climbers. And yet, year after year, people die on this mountain with its light, easygoing reputation, sometimes several in a single weekend. So, where does this toll come from? To understand it, we have to go back more than 2 centuries, to the day the dome was first climbed. It happens on the 8th of August in the year 1786. 2 residents of Chamonix, the crystal hunter Jacques Balmat and the doctor Michel Gabriel Paccard, are the first to reach the summit of Mont Blanc. They were spurred on by the scientist Horace Benedict de Saussure, who, years earlier, had promised a reward to whoever found a way to the top. This climb is generally regarded as the moment that gives birth to mountaineering as a sport. The mountain, for centuries looked upon from below as unreachable, becomes, for the first time, a goal, one that can be achieved and repeated. From that day on, Mont Blanc turns into a symbol, and people from all over Europe set their sights on reaching it. But this symbol has a flip side. Over more than 2 centuries, the mountain takes more lives than the 8,000ers, to which expeditions are mounted from all over the world, and more than Everest, which, across the entire history of records, has accumulated around 340 deaths. The figure for Mont Blanc itself is far harder to pin down. The most commonly cited range is 6,000 to 8,000 people over the whole of its history, but that estimate traces back to a single book, published in 1994, and no one has ever officially confirmed it. There simply is no continuous register of the dead on the mountain. Over 2 centuries, no one kept a running count. The exact number, in all likelihood, is something no one will ever know. And yet, the specialists agree on one thing. By the total number of people the mountain has taken, Mont Blanc stands in first place in the world, ahead of every peak on the planet, for all the uncertainty of the counts, and for all the gentleness of its easygoing reputation. First place by number of deaths sounds like a verdict, but the word deadly has a trap inside it. It's one thing to ask how many people a mountain has taken in total. It's quite another to ask how dangerous it is for each person who sets out on it. These are 2 different quantities. If you count not the total number, but the proportion of those who didn't come back, the picture flips. Of everyone who sets out on Mont Blanc in a given year, fewer than 0.1% die. On Everest, that figure hovers around 1%, and in difficult seasons it climbs higher still. On Annapurna, in the Himalayas, it has historically reached 18 to 32%. In some years, nearly 1 in 3 never return from the summit. On neighboring K2, the toll ran at 13 to 25%. To feel the gap, let's put it into a simple comparison. Next to Everest, Mont Blanc is safer by roughly 10 to 20 times, and against Annapurna or K2 by hundreds of times. There, the share of the dead is measured in tens of percent. Here, in hundredths of 1%. In terms of risk to the individual, Mont Blanc is just about the most forgiving high mountain in the world. And so, two facts coexist here that, at first glance, seem incompatible. For any single person, Mont Blanc is one of the safest peaks on the planet, and at the same time, it is first in the world by number of lives taken, the lowest risk, and the largest toll. How does this combination come about on one mountain? And why does no 8,000er have it? The answer begins with how people get here in the first place. To reach most high mountains, you have to walk, long and hard, before the climb itself even begins. With Mont Blanc, it's different. Here, the ascent doesn't start with a trail. It starts with a transport ticket. From Chamonix, a cable car lifts a person in a few minutes up to the Aiguille du Midi, to an altitude of 3,842 meters. On the other side of the Massif, a mountain tram operates. It runs from the valley up to the Nid d'Aigle station, at an altitude of 2,372 meters. About 3/4 of everyone heading for the summit use this tram. What once took days of grueling approach now fits into a single morning ride. Higher up along the route stand mountain refuges, Tête Rousse, Goûter, Cosmique. You can spend the night in them, eat, wait out bad weather. The mountain is, in essence, fitted out. A trail beaten flat by thousands of feet, fixed ropes at the key sections, a bed at the halfway point. All of this creates the feeling that what lies before you isn't a serious ascent, but a marked-out tourist route. So many people arrive that, at a certain point, the authorities of Saint-Gervais introduce a direct limit, no more than 214 people a day, and only with an advance booking for a place in the refuge. They try to administer the mountain almost like a national park, and yet, it's precisely this accessibility that throws people off. When a train runs to the summit and fixed ropes and a place to sleep await you on the route, it's easy to believe the mountain itself is simple too, that it's just a stroll with beautiful views. On Mont Blanc, that belief regularly costs people their lives. That's exactly how it all looks in September of the year 2024. 4 people set out on the Trois Monts route, one of the classic paths to the summit. 2 of them are Italians, Sara Stefanelli and Andrea Galimberti. Nearby, as a separate roped pair, go 2 climbers from South Korea. Neither group has a mountain guide. These are not beginners. Among them are experienced climbers with proper gear and more than one summit behind them. But Mont Blanc that day does not forgive even the well-prepared. They take noticeably longer than usual to reach the top, losing strength with every passing hour, and on the descent, the weather turns sharply for the worse. The temperature drops to around -15. The wind picks up to nearly 150 kilometers an hour. The mountain is swallowed by dense fog, in which every landmark disappears. Both roped pairs lose the route and get stuck right near the highest point. To descend blind, in the wind and the cold, after a climb of many hours, is beyond their strength. They call for rescue and pass on their coordinates, but the storm keeps the helicopters on the ground. Rising to reach them in such weather is impossible. On the 10th of September, the Chamonix rescuers finally reach the spot and find all 4. Too late. They had died of cold and exhaustion, never having received help, just 100 meters below the summit. Later, the mayor of Chamonix, going over what happened, will name 2 things among the causes: that the people went without a guide, and the language barrier, which made it hard to get warnings through to some of the climbers. And if you look closely, these 4 are no exception at all. A group without a guide on Mont Blanc is not a rarity, but the norm. About 2/3 of everyone who climbs here go without a guide. And now, the key figure. Over a single summer season, around 20,000 people set out on the mountain. By researchers' estimates, that's roughly 25 times more than reached the summit of Everest from the Nepalese side in the same period. 20,000 over a summer is not an abstraction. At the height of the season, 3, sometimes 400 people climb the mountain in a single day. On the normal route, dozens of roped parties work at the same time. People move in single file, staring at the backs of those who set out ahead of them. On days like that, the mountain resembles not a wild peak, but a queue slowly crawling up through the snow. And here is the whole paradox. The chance of dying, for one person, really is small, less than 1/10 of 1%. But if you multiply that tiny risk by 20,000 people a year, you end up with a number that's quite tangible. On the French route alone, According to data from 2018 onward, an average of about 10 people die per season. And over more than 2 centuries, it is exactly this kind of toll that carries Mont Blanc to first place in the world. It's not that the mountain is especially treacherous to each individual, it's that there are simply too many people on it at the same time. The commander of the local rescue service puts it bluntly: nowhere else on Earth is there such a concentration of people above 4,000 meters. That's where the figure comes from, the one that makes you flinch. But overcrowding doesn't explain everything. The mountain itself has sections where danger lies, in wait for anyone who passes through them. The most famous of these sections lies at an altitude of about 3,340 meters. This is the Gouter Couloir, a narrow snow and rock gully that nearly everyone on the classic route has to cross. It has a nickname that speaks for itself: the Corridor of Death. The danger here isn't in the steepness nor in the difficulty. The couloir is shaped like a funnel. Everything that crumbles loose from the surrounding cliffs above tumbles down precisely through it. Even a small stone, breaking free somewhere up high, is extremely dangerous at that speed. And a person, at that moment, crosses the gully out in the open, in plain view, without any shelter at all. What lies behind this short stretch can be seen in the statistics. Between 1990 and 2017, rescuers carry out 347 operations here. 102 people die, and another 230 are injured. That averages out to almost 4 deaths a season, the highest frequency of death at any single section in all the Alps. This one route alone accounts for about half of everyone the massif takes. How often a stone comes down here was shown by measurements. In the year 2019, specialists calculated that, during the season, a rockfall in the couloir occurs on average every 37 minutes. That's why experienced guides try to slip through this spot in the dark before 6 in the morning, in the quietest window when stones break loose least often. A few minutes with held breath, and the most dangerous part of the route is left behind. Except that timing it right doesn't always save you, and the Corridor of Death is only the most famous of this mountain's traps. In the spring of the year 2026, the massif demonstrated this in another of its sectors. On the 19th of March, in the area of the Grand Flambeau, a group is on the move, a training climb for people preparing to become mountain guides. These are not tourists who underestimated the mountain. These are people who are themselves learning to lead others. Among them is 43-year-old Carlo Chiodini. Around midday from above, with no warning at all, a rockfall breaks loose and engulfs the roped pair. Chiodini dies on the spot. His rope partner suffers serious injuries. The instructor, who was traveling with the same group, was unhurt. This is exactly the nature of objective danger. It makes no distinction about who stands before it. You can be without any training at all, or you can be all but a guide. To a stone flying down from above, it makes no difference. The prosecutor's office of Haute-Savoie opens an investigation, checks the instructor's qualifications, and finds no violations. By its conclusion, this was an accident that could not have been foreseen. And yet, this could not have been foreseen has a second layer to it. Stones in the mountains have always come loose. But in recent decades, researchers have linked the rise in the number of rockfalls to something slowly happening to the entire massif. It's warming. To understand exactly what is changing, you have to look inside the mountain itself, at what holds its rocks together. The answer is hidden in the cracks in the rock. High in the mountains, those cracks are filled with ice. This is permafrost, which works like a natural cement. The ice grips the fragments of rock fast, keeping them from shifting. As long as it's there, the wall holds. The moment it melts, the stones that have stood in place for thousands of years lose their support. And this is exactly what's happening to the massif as the climate warms. And the difference is most noticeable in the hot years. Scientists studying rockfalls on Mont Blanc discovered that, in the abnormally scorching summers of 2003 and 2015, the number of collapses spiked sharply, far above the norm. The heat literally melts the ice out of the rock walls. This is not a guess. Measurements have shown that permafrost lies in the rock right where the Corridor of Death runs, in the walls of that very Gouter couloir, which means the section that hundreds of people walk through every day is held together, in part, by ice. And that ice grows thinner with every warm season. To this is added one more slow mechanism. By day, the surface of the rock warms up. By night, it cools. Water seeps into the cracks, freezes, expands, and gradually pushes the stone outward. Year after year, these cycles loosen the roots from within, and the conclusion that emerges is alarming. The warmer the summer becomes, the less predictable even the well-studied classic road to the summit grows. To all of this, to the rising rockfall, to the unpredictability of the routes, those responsible for the mountain begin to react. And the reaction turns out to be an unusual one for mountaineering. In the summer of the year 2015, during intense heat, the Gouda Refuge is simply closed, not because of a breakdown, but to discourage people from going up on the most dangerous days. The rescuers advise plainly, in the heat, it's better not to set out on the mountain. The climb should be postponed. But warnings don't always work. The summer of the year 2024 becomes the deadliest on the Massif in 6 years. The accidents come one after another, almost without a break. Specialists even coin a separate term for it, the series effect, when misfortunes follow one upon another, piling up within the span of a few weeks. The causes of these cases differ. Here a fall, there a crevasse, there a rockfall. But if you look closely, one common feature shows through behind them. More often than not, at the root lies not fatal bad luck, but a human decision. The desire to reach the summit at any cost outweighs sober calculation. In the mountains, this is called a culture of the goal that crowds out a culture of refusal, the readiness to turn back in time. And as long as this pull toward the summit is stronger than caution, the flow of people to the mountain never runs dry, and the mountain remains exactly what it has been all along. And in this lies the central irony of the whole story. The mountain on which, in 1786, mountaineering was born, holds, more than 2 centuries later, the record for the number of lives taken. The place where the sport began has become the place where it most often ends, and this happens not in spite of its gentle reputation, but in large part because of it. Mont Blanc remains lethally dangerous precisely because it keeps on looking safe. Each new generation sees a beautiful, accessible, easygoing mountain, and underestimates it all over again. And now, to the old picture, a new variable is added. With every warm season, even the well-studied classic routes become a little less predictable than they were yesterday. The summit itself is changing too. When it was measured in the year 2023, its height came out at around 4,805 meters, lower than in earlier years. The ice dome at the very top lives a life of its own, and lately it has been settling little by little. The result is an alarming combination. The mountain is growing ever less stable, and at the same time, it remains just as open and accessible as before. Along its slopes, long lines of people still stretch upward, people for whom this is simply a vivid weekend in the mountains. And the central question, to which there is as yet no answer, sounds like this. What will become of all of them when one of the most visited high mountains in Europe grows even less predictable than it is today?